for being here today. Now, Rick, I'm very familiar with your work because I've met you before. Jeff, you and I have just met today.
Yep.
So this will be fun. We'll actually start with some great questions because I feel like, Rick, you have done a lot of cell animation work for Disney over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, you're more of a digital animator, is that correct?
That's right. That's right. I did do some cell animation work for television, but when I started working theatrically on movies, then I started doing computer animation. So, I always felt bad, like, obviously it wasn't intentional, but I always felt bad that when Toy Story was successful, that everybody went, that's what we're gonna do from now on forever. It's just like, no, that's, it was a shame because I feel like 2D is its own thing and it has its own strengths, and I really am sad that it's been so diminished over.
Me too. Since I do it, me too.
Yeah.
So what about that dynamic then, Rick? Because I mean, you definitely have that traditional 2D
Right.
animated cell style, and now everything is 3D. I kind of wish we could go back to 2D animation. Somebody did tell me once that they might be doing something like that.
There
but what's your
actually is a
thoughts?
lot of 2D being done. Not in the big studios, like Disney's not doing a 2D film, Pixar's not doing a 2D film, DreamWorks isn't doing a 2D film, but there are 2D films overseas, and there's lots of in smaller.
Yeah, Cartoon Saloon.
Cartoon Saloon.
It's a great one.
Yeah, with I just forgot his name.
I don't remember something.
I forgot his name. Sorry. He did Song of the Sea.
That's right, Tom.
Tom Moore. He's
There we go.
with two M's. Tom. He's a great guy. He loves, of course, 2D
Don't
and
confuse
stuff.
that with the Forbidden Movie.
No. And anyway, so he's doing stuff, and then Sylvain Chomet,
Yep.
who did Triplets of Belleville, and the Illusionist is doing. He just released a new film.
Yep.
Now he's producing another hand-drawn film that he wants me to work on. So,
Awesome.
and he's in France. I'm not going to probably go to France, but if he wants me to, I'll probably do it. But anyway, so there are a lot of 2D things happening. It's never totally done.
And Miyazaki is probably never
Oh, yeah.
going to retire.
Miyazaki,
Right? Like, he always says he will. but
Every
it's
film
like-
he says it's my last film, and he does another one. So there's a lot of interest. I mean, I meet a lot of you people at these conventions and stuff, and you guys all love the 2D stuff. And I've always just felt there's room for both. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Definitely.
So we'll see what happens. But I have never stopped doing 2D, even when the CG stuff took hold. I did take a Maya class several years ago, and I remember learning how to do a golf ball falling off of a tee and bouncing. And I'm like, well, that's cute, but I can't imagine doing this, for a living. So I did try it, and I did enjoy the class. And there's things about CG that I do really like.
Yeah.
But I just, for me, I get more of a joy of just having a blank piece of paper and a pencil,
Yeah.
and just creating something out of nothing. And
That totally makes sense. I mean, that's one of the reasons I went from, because when I first got to Pixar, I was moving into where I wanted to be an animator there. And I could do it, but one of the things I learned about computer animation is with hand-drawn animation, you kind of have two roads you can take. You can either be a pose-to-pose person, where you can plan it out and decide what you want to do using key drawings, or you can go straight ahead and go, I don't know where this is going.
Yeah.
I know pretty much where I'm going to start and where I'm going to end, but that's it, everything in the middle. And I didn't realize at the time, that's mostly how my mind works. Like, I like to just start working on something and then let my mind decide what it's doing. And unfortunately, with computer animation, that doesn't really work well. Like, computer animation is the thing where, like, if you want to do, say, a walk, right? You layer it like an onion, where you animate, where it's like you take the torso, you may have the whole model, but you shut off everything except for you can see the torso. So you animate the torso bouncing, and then you put on maybe the head's flopping, and then, and you kind of go like that, you layer it on bit by bit, but you have to know where you're going. And so for me, it was a struggle, and eventually I decided I liked drawing more than I liked animating on the computer. And so I got into storyboarding, and fortunately that worked out for me,
Yeah.
you know. So in a way, I kind of agree in the sense that, like, to me, the joy of drawing is a big part of being a part of animation. But it's a trade-off. Like with computer animation, you don't have to worry about being on model. The model is the model. Like, anybody can animate it if they're good, and it will always, Woody will always look like Woody,
The same, yeah.
right?
Well, let me ask you a question in regards to that then, because I know a lot of times when artists have reference from the characters themselves doing the voices, because the voices are always recorded before the animation is done. Does the character reference make it easier, or do you prefer, like you said, to kind of just make it form on its own with your own creative inspiration?
I've always, for me personally, when I was, let's say I was animating Scott. Okay, let's say I'm doing that. Buddy Hackett's doing the voice. I would go to the recording sessions to watch him act, because I would get a lot out of his acting, not just the voice, which was great enough, but I want to see what he's doing up there. I want to see his acting, his facial expressions, his attitude.
Yeah.
And for boards, same thing. You want to create something with personality and performance in it. So I got a lot out of going to the recordings of seeing Buddy, do the voice, and I would just sit there and draw him and go, oh man, I love that expression, which I wasn't getting from the Scuttle model sheet, but I get it from Buddy Hackett.
Right.
So, I think both of us, enjoyed having that reference, that live action, either recording or the video or whatever, because it really helps imbue life into the stuff we're doing, whether it's boards or animating. And speaking of boards, when I was at DreamWorks and I had done Prince of Egypt and Road to El Dorado, and during El Dorado I started doing more story stuff, just lots of ideas and gags and stuff, and sending them to the director and Jeffrey Katzenberg was like, you need to get into story, I love your ideas. I said, well, I don't want to stop animating, I like animating, but I like to come up with story ideas. And he goes, listen, he finally says, listen, no one's going to miss your animation, you need to start doing storyboards. So I thought, well, that's a nice backhanded comment. It's a backhanded insult as it was. But so I said, all right. So at the end of El Dorado, I started working on Shrek and doing boards on that. And I thought, well, this is a way to keep my drawing alive. Rather than just going and buying it, like you said about Pixar and being a CG animator, I can still draw and do acting and have some fun doing storyboards. So I learned to do storyboards on Shrek. And so the second half of my career, I was doing both. I was doing boards and animating, depending on what was needed.
Right.
And so that way I was able to continue to draw, which is our love, I think both of us.
Yeah, definitely.
But, I didn't, maybe it wasn't animating, but I was still able to be creative and come up with expressions and acting and stuff in my storyboards. So I was able to continue to draw, and that was really
and I think ultimately, in terms of the source recordings, like, I'm not sure at Pixar how many times, like, I know we did have footage of the voice actors doing things. I'm not sure how much the animators looked at it. I'm assuming they did to some degree. And well, I mean, it's something where, I think there are times too where an animator can, they can listen to the voice, and then they can do their own acting and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, like, they're different mediums, but in a lot of ways it's the same thing. It's just doing it with a different tool. And a lot of it just comes down to, like, which tool do you feel the most comfortable with, to a degree. I mean, like, obviously if a tool dominates the industry, then it's kind of like, all right, well, to some degree the decision's been made for you. But the principles and the ideas, they're the same. It's not really any different in the sense of, whatever, whether you're listening to, like, I think back in the day they had, like, literal records that were pressed, and they would listen to it, and they would listen to it over and over again.
Right.
And early on we had, digital sound files that we would listen to over and over again. And sometimes, I remember there was one that was funny because there was some kind of glitch in it. It was like, it's pretty good, Woody. And it would, like, there was this weird jump at the end for some weird reason. And it was just, and that just became like this weird in-joke that, like if I said that in front of somebody who worked on the movie, they wouldn't remember, they'd know what I was talking about. But it's all kind of the same.
Now we talked about the character references as far as you watching the actors perform and how they emote, because different people speak differently, they use their mouths, their eyes differently. How often do you guys actually have to look in the mirror and re-reference something based on your own
I
expressions?
used to think that the mirror thing was like just sort of a prop for books. Like I just made a publicity photo of Ward Kimball looking in the mirror going, doing these weird faces, but we really do that. So I was like, yeah, man, I need that mirror. So, you know, for expressions and acting, it absolutely was helpful. Or I had a full length mirror in my room when I was working on Mermaid or whatever, and I'd just do poses. I'm like, what does it look like when your shoulder turns or whatever? So it'd be like, the mirror thing really does work. I mean, it really was an essential part of creating a performance.
Yeah, we used to have a room, I think they just literally called it the performance room, where you could go in and film yourself if you needed to do a full body thing, and then you could look at that later. And now it's getting to the point where there's a thing being developed, what's it called? I think it's called Cartwheel, and basically where you can record something, you know, whatever you want to do, and then that is like Cartwheel kind of is like motion capture, where it'll take the video and put the information into the model, so you get kind of a first pass of whatever the movement is, and then I don't think it's intended to be a substitute of like, well, animation's done, you know, whatever. But I think it's a thing where it's just trying to get you to that foundation. That first foundation to start refining as quickly as possible, which, you know, if that's what it's for, then that's great.
Now, once the process starts, animation it takes a long time. There's literally frame by frame that you have to do everything. Sometimes even multiple pictures per second. How do you guys find the patience to make that time pass and still enjoy what you do?
I've always never been impatient about it. To me, it was like, I just love doing it. So it was never like, oh, I gotta do this, oh, it's taking so long. To me, it was just, I was making something happen, bringing something to life, and that was never tiring to me. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say to me, when I showed them my flip drawings, and were like, man, you must have such incredible patience. I'm like, patience in talent, I guess, because it's like, I guess it's patience, but if you're doing good animation, you're having a good time doing it, animating or boarding or whatever, you'd never get tired of it. You just want to keep going. So to me, it was never so much about patience as it was about trying to create something excellent and getting, for me, the challenging thing was getting what was in my head, what I wanted it to look like, to actually happen. Once I was able to do that, then I felt really successful. Like that's exact. When I watched I'd shoot the test, watch it on the screen or whatever. I go, that's exactly what I wanted. Then I feel successful. If it's a little lacking, and then I'd like, okay, I gotta fit. It's just something wrong with this. Then I need to show it to someone else, and what do you think of this or whatever? But I would keep working to get it to what it was in my mind. You know, like I want it to look like this, and it's such a satisfying feeling to finish something and do something that was how you thought it was going to look, like the ideal version. You know, that's really rewarding.
Well, God bless you guys for having the patience, because if it wasn't for people like you, we wouldn't have such amazing movies that you've created. So thank you for that.
Oh, sure.
Jeff, same question.
Well, I feel like this is where, you know, because you've done storyboarding, you know, that this is where there's a clearer fork in the road, in the sense of with animating, you know, yes, you have there's a gap in terms of like, how will my work be cleaned up? How well will the assistant do it? You know, that kind of thing, where you can plan it out, but there might be things that you don't have control over that could affect it. And you'd be like, it's not really quite what I. But with storyboarding, I'd say the biggest challenge is not being patient. It's not about patience, it's just simply deadlines, where it's like, I have to get this done in X amount of time, and, you know, how can I best serve this script and these ideas in the time I have? because it's just, that's the thing I think that's the hardest, where, you know, you just never feel like you have enough time to do what you know, to make it look the way you want it to look in this, and ultimately, to a certain degree, because storyboards are like a blueprint for a house. They're basically there as a guide for production, so that, like, it would be like making a house without a blueprint, right? It's like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have put the chimney in the basement, you know, type of thing. And so it's not entirely about planning, but a lot of it is about planning in terms of, oh, this emotional thing isn't landing the way we want, so that's the cheaper stage to chop stuff up and move it around and whatever. So your work will seldom look the way it, unless the crew is very small, and it's rare that your boarded sequence will look a lot like the final one, just because another board artist might go over it later, and then, you know, because it needs to be revised and you're working on something else and that has to go to someone else. So there's that, and then, you know, and then the story changes itself and whatever. So lots of things come in, so that unless the movie just doesn't have time to do that, where it's like, whatever, draw it twice and then we got to do whatever it is, that was closer to Toy Story 2, where we had a much shorter production schedule and it was pretty much shoot from the hip to a great degree. So there was more of that I could look at and go, yeah, that's pretty much the way I drew it. And some of it was just simply, we didn't have time to second guess anything. And so that's the main difference, is like, there is a gap between, like, you know, you animate and it's on the screen, and there is a gap, like, it will look different, but that gap is much smaller than it is, I think, with storyboarding.
100%.
So that's the thing. It's like, and again, it's not, I don't feel like it's so much about patience. I think there is, you know, there is a joy, and you just like, wow, I'm laying down the foundation of what this sequence is, you know, and you know it's going to be different, but at the same time, by being first, there's a certain amount of stuff that will stay just because it's first, to some degree. And so that's the biggest challenge, is just getting it done on time.
So you guys have actually kind of both touched on this a little bit, but can you think of any particular moment where you animated something and there was a moment where you're just like, something just doesn't look right, but somebody else has said, no, it's perfect, that's exactly what we need.
All the time. Because like production people, who are sometimes not our friends, they're more about getting something done when it's supposed to get done. Like, I have a timeline, they walk in with a clipboard, this needs to be done by this day, kind of a thing. That's usually, you know, who will say, you know, but sometimes a director will say, it does what it's supposed to do, it's done. Yeah, you'd love to make it even better, or,
right,
you know, but the point is, this is a production where stuff has to be finished to go in the pipeline. The scene does what it's supposed to do. Let it go. You got a new one coming up, maybe that's going to be exactly what you want. So you have to sort of, production kind of has priority.
Yeah, and they help prioritize for you.
Yeah,
you know, and that's not always bad.
Yeah, no, it's not, because you hang on to stuff. All of us would hang on to stuff too long. I want it to be perfect.
Right.
So you go up, you do it again and again. But you can't do that. You can't make a movie that way. That's Richard Williams, you know.
His name did come to mind.
He spent like 25 years working on a film he never finished. And it's like, you don't, and then they took it out of his hands. They said, that's enough, we're taking it, we're gonna finish it ourselves and put it out. So you don't want that to happen. So you do the best you can, and someone's gonna eventually tell you, hey, look, Rick, it works. It does what it's supposed to do. It'd be nice if it was the greatest piece of animation ever done, but it's finished, it's good enough, we're gonna put it in. So, you know, you're like, I wish I could redo that, but I don't think there's any scene that I've done that I will watch now and go, man, that really sucks. There are scenes where all I got, I wish I had a little more time. Now I know what I wanted to do with this.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that, but there's never anything where I was wrong, you know, where I should have, you know, it doesn't work. It does work. They were right, it works. You know, I'd like to maybe redo it, but it works.
And the thing that can happen too is if you get too caught up in technical perfection,
yeah,
then ultimately, like, in a way, the animation is all that's left, in the sense of you look at it and go, oh, well, that moves beautifully, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to feel what you should in the story. It may just turn into something where it's calling attention to itself, and it's not, it's doing more than it needs to in the wrong direction. And that's the thing that a lot of times, you know, if you're in the hands of a good director, ideally, that they will know, like, you know, this scene, you know, every scene is important, but in the grand scheme of things, this is just a couple of seconds, and, you know, calm down. We just, you know, it's a bridge to something else.
The character's this big. He's running away in the distance.
Right.
I know you want to spend 4 weeks on it, but you've got 2 days.
Right,
You know?
and
It's
you
not
want it
that
to
big a
run
deal.
just right, and you want to still have all the clothes move just right or whatever, but ultimately, you know, like there was a neat story I heard, this is more of a technical thing, but there was ILM was working on The Last Starfighter, and everyone was like agonizing over, there was like a pixel that was wrong. And basically, you know, they were talking about it, and Dennis Muren just took out his laser pointer and went, the audience is looking over here, they're not looking there.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You know, and it's just, you need people like that that have the bigger picture, so that you don't wind up just throwing tons of time and money at things that ultimately audience is looking over there. You know, there's so many examples of something egregious happening in a scene, but the scene is working so well. There's a great one online of a sequence in The Abyss where Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio or whatever, she's drowning, and basically in the midst of that, someone, like, the lens got wet and somebody wiped it. And you would think, oh, there's no way I didn't see
I
that.
have seen that movie 1,000 times. That is the most powerful scene in the movie.
Right.
Never noticed a thing.
Right, and it's like, you know, and of course on YouTube or whatever, they slow it down, and it's like, then it becomes like an elephant. You're just like, what? But I never, you know, I've seen the film 2 or 3 times and I never saw it. So it's that kind of thing. It's priorities, where it's just like, if it's working, crazy things can happen in the shot, and you just won't. You just be like, well, I don't know. She's drowning. That's all I care about, and that's the important thing.
Speaking of making mistakes, I did a scene in The Great Mouse Detective. It's the first film I was an animator on, so I was, you know, I wasn't at my best, but I was learning. And I did a scene of Toby, the puppy, running towards camera, and then he turns and runs 3/4 away from us. I mean, that's hard to draw and animate. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And I did it about 3 times, and the camera's following him, and it looked okay. And I remember John Musker going, no, this is fine. Okay, that's good. You're done. Yeah, kind of like you're done with it. I'm like, all right, I think it still could be a little better, but I guess he knows what he's talking about. So the next time I saw the film, there was a picket fence in front of Toby, where he's, you don't even, you barely know he's there, but they just say, I don't know what you're gonna do. You put a picket. Next time you see the film, you see a dog running.
Oh, no.
All of a sudden, there's a picket fence or a panning. I'm like, oh, where is he again? And then you see him running away. So there's ways to sort of fix stuff, but I'm like, well, it works.
By hiding it.
It works. This thing works now. So what am I gonna say? But anyway, that's kind of funny.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
that's kind of a, like, that's a clever fix, and there's all kinds of stuff like that. The more you read about movies, the more you learn about them. It's like, wait, you did that amazing shot like that? You know, or it's like, yeah, we had like 2x4s, we put Vaseline on them, and then we had the camera on a plank and slid it along.
Yeah.
Some really janky way to do it. And when you see the movie, it looks fantastic.
It's not janky, it's movie magic.
Professional, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just this thing where there's so much baling wire and spit and whatever, what is it, duct tape, that you know, but you're not on that end of it, so it's just not there.
Okay, quick question before we get into some Q&A for those who might have questions. Be prepared. Now I know that Jeff, you have done voice acting as well.
Yeah.
You were the voice of the little green men from the
Yeah.
Toy Story series.
Oh.
Yeah.
Rick, have you ever done any voices
I
before?
did one voice in a short called Sport Goofy that Disney did a long time ago. I was one of the Beagle Boys. And I think we all talked at the same time. Hey, what do you do? And it was like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It was like, that was it. And so I don't really do, this is my voice work right here. But anyway,
Yeah.
so that was it for me.
And for me, it was basically like, in some ways, like I remember going to a screening where Baz Luhrmann was going to be there. I think it was for Simply Ballroom. And someone was like, "Hey, how did you get into directing?" And he was like, "Oh, I don't know. I was directing for theater, and I just kind of fell into it." And sometimes that's really irritating to hear, right? Like it just sounded so easy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what happened to me with voice acting, where, when I was in my 20s, I would do all these, like, I wasn't like Michael Winslow or something, but I did a lot of sound effects, and I would imitate people and stuff, and all these like weird sounds and noises and things. And so because of that, there'd be these things that would happen, and then, John Lasseter would go, "Oh, well, why don't you do that? Why don't you do the alien? Here, breathe this helium, do that," type of thing. And so I would do it, or like one that I used to do is, depending on how old you are, they used to have the old Texas Instruments speak and spell, where it'd be like A C D E,
welcome.
yeah, it'd be just like spell encyclopedia, and make people laugh. And then so when the time came for Mr. Spell, I did that, type of thing. And then, they would process it and things to make it sound more electronic, but I would do these silly things, and then it would be like, "Hey, you do it," So it was kind of like that. It was very organic, and after 2 or 3 of them, I was lucky in that I was able to get, Taft-Hartley into SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, because if you do it just once and you're not part of it, you get they have to pay a fine or something. But if you do like 2 or 3, then you have an opportunity to become a union member, which is what I wound up doing. So I got to do the aliens, I got to do Mr. Spell, and then because things were, especially with Toy Story, and early on, it was much more like an independent film than a big studio thing. Like that kind of came later as Pixar grew. So early on with the early films, it was sort of more of like a traveling company where it's like, "Oh, here, do this little thing," or whatever. So there might be a grasshopper henchman or something where it's like, "You do it," type of thing. And because I went to college with Andrew Stanton, like we were roommates at one point, and so we were good friends. And so a lot of times we'd get paired together, there's a thing in Wall-E where you've got the people on the sleds, and it's like, what do you want to do? And it's like, I don't know, let's go, shoot golf balls into orbit. It's like, I don't want to do that. And we'd have these pairs that would be conversations type of thing, and then the grasshoppers were like that too. It was like, "Didn't you hear, Hopper? First we're gonna get all the grain, then we squish the queen, end of story," type of thing. So I just get these little bit parts, and it was neat. And the great thing is when you can get into the union, then it's like you get little residuals along the way, and it's not.
Congratulations for getting in too, because I know that's an achievement for an actor.
Yeah, and again, it was not like and then I will do this, and then it wasn't this plan. It just sort of happened. And the only thing that I'm glad I was able to get into the union, and then and then over the years, you would get whatever, and it's not anything you could schedule, but every now and then you get a check, and they'd have like the big list of like, okay, here's the royalties for this movie and this movie and this, and then there were others where I was completely kind of anonymous, where, like, say for example, in The Incredibles, I might be one of the protesters early on, where it's like, whatever, no supers or whatever, and I'd just be part of the crowd. But I still recorded that, and I would get a little something for that too. So pretty cool.
That's
It
awesome.
was
That's
fun.
awesome.
It was all, and I think I had some up as well that way where it's not anything that I could point to and go, oh, I was that really prominent. No, it was just background, but still,
Yeah.
still.
That's cool.
All right. So, does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? Go ahead.
What was your favorite moment in all of the films you voiced, and what did you think of Phyllis Diller being the queen?
Oh, Phil, I mean, I didn't meet her or anything, like a lot of the voice stuff, like I thought she was great casting, and I thought she was really funny, and I always liked her, so that was like, oh, cool, type of thing, but I didn't get to meet her or anything. That was a neat thing, and we've had a lot of good casting decisions over the years where I just felt like that's not somebody I think your average studio would necessarily pick, a bit off center, and I thought they were very good, savvy, humor-based choices where it's like, oh, she's gonna be funny, type of thing. And as far as moments go, like, it was all fun, because it's not, the thing that's always kind of, like, I always appreciate that people enjoy the voice work so much, but I'm always a little amused because for me, like, storyboarding is such hard work. And, it takes years, and, voice work is like it takes very little time, at least for me. Like, there were times when I would do temp work where before they would bring in what I would call the expensive people. Like I did temp work for Marlin, for Finding Nemo. And when you get a bigger role like that, it's a lot of work because the story is being revised a lot and you're being called back in more, again and again. But in general, like if I'm doing something, for reals, for real, it was all fun. I think the only thing I remember some weirdness, which wasn't fun, but it was memorable, where because The Martian, for the movies, just for the movies, for the most part, the Martians were helium, and because the film was under the gun so hard, there were a couple of moments with Toy Story 2 where I did ADR, which is automatic dialogue recording, which what that basically means is at that point that part of the film is done, and you're performing to picture, right? So like they would run the thing, and then you would have a sync, like bup bup bup, and then you would you'd say your thing, you'd say your bit. Well, the only thing with that is in order to do that, I have to keep the helium in my lungs that whole time.
Oh.
Right? So I have to go like this, and then bup, 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 and that's much longer, 3 or 4 times longer than if I just went like the clouds, my bastard, and then it'd be like, whoa, you'd be done. So, I think I did 2 or 3 of those, and I don't remember what the lines were, but it was during the in the airport with the luggage area where the aliens, I think, were running around doing something. And so I did 2 or 3 lines, and basically someone called to me, and my memory of it is that they went, Jeff, and I went like, yes, but apparently in reality it was Jeff, yes. It was like, and they were like, okay, you need to sit down, and you need to there was apparently this huge gap that I wasn't aware of at all. And
Too much helium.
yeah, too much helium. I think there was one other time, it was very rare that anybody did very rare that anybody else did aliens, but I think there was a point where John and what's his face? Joe Ranft and Andrew, and maybe I think Lee was in there too. And this was back in Richmond where we didn't have a super cool recording thing. It was one of those things that you'd buy, like one of those boxes you'd buy with the foam in it. And so, you know, they were doing it so they could do multiple aliens at once. And I think it was for a teaser. I think it was for the Toy Story 2 teaser where the claw would come in with the 2 and be like, ooh, 2. And so we all breathed at once and we all did it. But like, you know, the box has like, whatever, 2 soda cans full of oxygen in it in the first place. And then we've all got helium in our lungs, so we all had like kind of a brownout where it was like, oh. And that was the only other one I remember. I mean, it was, you know, I'm glad, you know, it was fun to do. I'm glad I don't do it that often anymore. And what basically happened, because the aliens took off and became very popular and started getting it like, oh, we want to put him in this, we want to put him in that. And so, you know, people would come with like a script for a video game that was like, you know, it was, you know, they'd be like that thick, like a script that thick. And it's like, I can't breathe helium for all those lines.
Rick, any takeaways from your experiences, like in animation? I know you didn't do as many voices, obviously, but any favorite moments from a specific movie?
I'll give you a favorite moment, and this is a weird one. It has nothing to do with my work. I mean, I'm very happy to have worked mostly at Disney and of course DreamWorks.
Yeah.
And I have some favorites. You know, I think the Scuttle Dinglehopper scene was fun. And Abu up on the roof with Jasmine and Aladdin when you first meet Jasmine, when you first sort of meet Jasmine, they're getting together, and Abu's up there with the apple and all that stuff. That was really fun. So there's a lot of scenes I thought turned out really nice. But actually, one of my favorite moments of ever, and this is going to seem like a weird one, we were screening the Little Mermaid for Ward Kimball, and we used to call in the nine old men, the ones who were still around, and show them our film in progress, just to get their blessing and their feedback. And you guys are the greatest. What do you think of what we're doing? That kind of stuff.
And then you asked Ward.
So yes, so we had Ward come in, and we showed him Little Mermaid. It was pretty much all finished. It was mostly storyboarded, but there's a lot of animation in there too. So we had worked out a lot of any kind of story kinks or whatever. So we thought it was, let's show it to Ward and see what he thinks. So I remember we showed Little Mermaid, and I remember the lights come up, and he said, "So Ward, what do you think?" And he starts to talk a little bit. Well, you know, you guys are doing pretty good at this and that. I think what I would do, and then he just kind of stopped and he turned around and looked at. I thought he looked at John Musker and Ron, you know, and he turns around and he goes, I don't know why you care what us old farts think. He says, he goes, you guys obviously know what you're doing. He said, just keep doing that. And to me, it was like, oh my God, this is such an emotional thing for those guys, or for a guy representing the old guard to say, you don't need us. You guys know what you're doing, just do it.
Yeah.
That was
a huge compliment.
That was huge.
That's awesome.
I get emotional talking about it because it was like such a big, you know, you idolize these guys who created this beautiful art form, and for them to say, and for one of them to say, and Ward was a kind of a wise guy.
I was going to say,
for him to be that sincere,
from
for him to be that sincere and honest, and just say, you guys, never mind what we think.
Wow.
It's not important. You guys know what you're doing, and that's obvious. Just keep going that direction. That was huge.
That's beautiful.
That was huge.
That's beautiful. Any other questions? We'll go to the back first here. Yes.
Do either of you have a character that you animated or created that you're most proud of?
Character that you animated or created?
My personal favorites of all the characters I have animated, and I would only do sidekicks. They would not trust me with the leads. They would only let me do funny stuff, which is fine. But either Abu or Scuttle are my favorites, just because I just had so much fun doing those two guys. So those are my personal favorites.
Secondary characters are great anyway. Like one of the reasons why I like the Coen brothers so much is I feel like their main characters don't feel like main characters. And I feel like their films almost feel like they're cast entirely with secondary characters. Like in any other film, all those characters would be secondary, but in their movies, they're like either main characters or I think one of the biggest pitfalls is really hard to escape for an animated film is what I call main character disease, where you want them to be so likable and so what's the word, like likable, and you want the audience to connect with them so badly that they become bland. And it, you know, it doesn't happen all the time, but I mean it happens. It's always a risk.
You're afraid to give them any edge, anything that's not complimentary and likable, so they would be boring. You want a character with some edge to him or her, and you know that they feel real, and the audience can say, I can relate to that person, that character, because I'm kind of like that too. You know, no one's perfect. You don't want a perfect lead.
But Jeff, do you have any specific characters that you created that were your favorites?
Well, I mean, I think it's harder for me because I don't feel like I can go, oh, well, I created that. You know, like, I have characters that I really felt a kinship to, even though I wasn't necessarily super, like, I love the potato heads. Like, that's, you know, I love them because they are, to some degree, they fit that thing, you know, where they are very firmly secondary characters, and I also feel like if there's any chance that the Toy Story films could get to saccharine, they're right there to, like, just to take the air out of the balloon just a little bit, you know, or you're like, yeah, the attic, you know, where it's like they're always there, and I just, you know, like both Don Rickles and Estelle Harris were fantastic choices, and one of the things I would have loved to have been able to do, or for it to just happen, even if I wasn't involved, would be to have a short with just the two of them, like how they met at Christmas or something that, you know, because I just love them so much.
They're like that character, that couple on the block that everybody knows and just kind of anchors everything.
Well, in a good way, I felt like they reminded me of the good aspects of The Honeymooners, where it's like two characters that are like, and, you know, to a degree, you could be like, oh my God, but you know they love each other dearly.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Next question. Yes.
I saw that Tom Bancroft, another Disney animator, like did a Jesus film a while ago, and it was like by himself. And I was wondering if Rick or Jeff, if you had any like pet projects you wanted to do on your own, like apart from Disney or something.
I have a couple of things that I'm kind of developing on my own. One of them is a short with elephants.
Ooh.
Like I said, I love elephants so much. I want to keep animating elephants. Because I animated Abu when he was the elephant. So I'm like, I love elephants. Why don't I just do a film about elephants? Anyway, so I'm kind of developing that. I haven't had a lot of time because I'm very busy. But that's one personal thing just for me that I'm kind of developing. I'm sure he's got stuff.
Yeah, I have for the longest time, I kind of put all of my energy into the project that was sort of in front of me, and as I got older, I started feeling like, you know, this is something I think I want to try to do something of my own, and so I am slowly working on a short, basically, you know, centered around my relationship with my father, who has since passed on. And so I'm doing that gradually, and part of it is I think I'm trying to muster up the creative courage, because I'm used to doing things. I don't know how often this happens with creative people, but for me, I'm the most comfortable and the most secure if I'm working on somebody else's thing. It's very hard to work on something of your own. To some degree, like I have a thing, like an ability I have, which I think overall is a good one, is that someone can come to me and go, oh, I need ideas dealing with a mouse in a hat. And I can go, well, here's a tall mouse and a little hat. I can come up with hundreds, you know, whatever. And blah, 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 blah.
You need that prompt.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing that's, I think what can flip that is if I'm working on my own thing, I have a million paths that I can go on, and I don't know, I'm never quite sure which one to take. And that's a real challenge. So I'm trying to learn how to do that, and but I am
Just look in the mirror and tell yourself what to do.
yeah.
It's very simple.
That's easy.
Yeah.
Right.
That guy's an idiot.
I'm gonna tell you this one more time.
Right. I have time for one more question. If
So
anybody
make it
has
great.
I know
Make
you've asked
it
a question. Is there
incredible.
anybody
Make
else
it this
before? No?
amazing
Okay. Oh, wait.
question.
We'll do the Sully in the back there. Go ahead with your
Sully,
question.
yeah.
What would you say is the project that you were not exactly most proud of, but the most challenging project?
So the question, if anybody didn't hear, is the most challenging project that you've worked on.
I'll answer first.
Yeah, that's fine.
My favorite thing I worked on, excuse me, you said favorite first, is Aladdin. That's my favorite movie that I worked on. There's a lot of good ones, but that one's my favorite. The most challenging one was Prince of Egypt because it was very realistic, and I was used to doing cartoony, goofy stuff, and I was given the camel to animate. And although he was funny, I had to make him move like a real camel. There's no goofing around here. So I had to study the movements of a camel and how everything articulates and all that. It was really hard. I think my scenes turned out really well, but they were really hard to do. So that movie was a real big challenge for me. But it was rewarding when it was finished and it was all done. And I think it looked really, really great, and people seemed to really like it. So that was, to me, the most challenging as an animator doing that.
I think for me, as far as what I'm proudest of, I'd say probably just the body of the Toy Story films, in the sense that I just feel lucky to have been able to contribute to them. I feel very proud of them for a variety of reasons. And the fact that we could take toys and the stages of a toy's existence could echo the stages of a person's life, in the sense of, oh, I'm born and I'm the only one, and now here comes my baby brother or sister, and what do I do with that? But you can also look at it as an adult. Like, it's not, I love the fact that, I'm very proud of the fact that adults and children can watch those films and they can each get something very emotional, similar but very different emotional takeaways from them. And I'm very proud of that, because I think if you're not careful, it's a slippery slope where, you can be here and then all of a sudden, and it's like, oh, only a kid's gonna wanna watch this. And I basically, I saw movies like that as a kid, and I call them smoke in the lobby movies. Because this is, obviously back when you could do that, but there were movies that a parent would have no interest in seeing, and they would basically, either they would drop you off back in the day, or they would go shopping, or they would go out and smoke in the lobby or something if they didn't feel, and I'm glad that a lot of the Pixar films, if not all of them, have escaped that pitfall, that people can watch them together, and the adult isn't like counting tiles in the ceiling or something.
You never smell cigarette smoke ever. Not in even one Pixar movie do you smell cigarette smoke.
No, but they have made it definitely something that's enjoyable for the whole
Oh,
family, which I think is actually really awesome, because that's kind of instilling what
It's so
Walt
hard to
Disney
do that, and
wanted to do.
Those movies really do that.
Yeah, make it all about families.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's so great.
usually when you say family film, that just makes everybody think of Johnny Cotton Ball and in Marshmallow Land, where it's like there's no grit, or however edge or grit to them. And I feel like I'm proud to have been able to contribute a quality that could make everybody be emotional in some way, whether it's like the thing in Toy Story 3, and I'm really glad Lee did this, because I feel like if you go to a Disney film, you are genetically programmed, if the castle is in front of it, nothing serious is gonna happen, to a degree, right? And so you're sitting there watching the film like, all right, it's gonna be fine. And the fact that in the incinerator sequence, he let it play long enough that people started to worry.
You were scared.
And it was like, this is it's gonna be all right, right? You know, it starts eating away at you because it's going on too long, you know, and
Definitely.
I'm very proud of, I mean, like, I had nothing to do with that, but I'm very proud that the film could do that because I've seen so many where part of it may just be me, but I just sort of cross my arms. It's like, this is gonna be fine, you know, I'm not that worried. And I know audiences, or at least I feel like audiences want it too. That they want that sense of danger and risk, you know.
I think so too,
thing,
yeah. And
you know.
thank you guys both for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of this
Sure.
panel. Thank you, audience, for all your wonderful questions. Let's give a big hand for Rick Farmiloe, Jeff Pidgeon for being up here today and joining us at MouseCon'25. Thank you so much, everybody.